Everyone thought this German Shepherd puppy was broken, and 5 months later, one test would prove he had never heard a single word we said. It was daytime in Spokane, Washington, when I got the call and drove out to the municipal intake block after a few people from a trailer park brought him in and said he had been sitting alone behind their lot since morning. He was about 5 months old, all dark gray coat and long, young legs, too thin under the fur but without any open wounds, and he was tucked into a damp concrete corner as if he had already learned that walls usually asked less from him than people did. A metal kennel door slammed somewhere down the corridor. The old fan kept humming above the bleach smell, and gray streaks from a wet mop still dragged across the floor. But the puppy did not flinch, did not lift his head, did not whine, and did not offer even the tired little growl that frightened dogs sometimes use to keep the world back. What he did instead caught me harder than any noise in that place could have. The moment I moved my hands slowly where he could see it, his eyes locked onto my fingers with a kind of careful urgency, as if hands were the only honest thing about us and the rest of a person was just risk wrapped around it. I said a few soft words out of habit, and he gave me nothing at all. But when I stopped talking and let my hand rest lower, his whole attention stayed there, steady and sharp, following the smallest motion like it mattered more than my face. My name is Warren, and by then I had handled enough frightened dogs to know the difference between panic, shutdown, and plain exhaustion. But this puppy did not fit any of those shapes cleanly. So I turned my body a little sideways, kept my eyes off him, laid the leash on the floor instead of reaching with it, and let the room quiet down around him. A scared dog will often choose distance before comfort, and sometimes the kindest thing you can do is stop asking and give him a way to decide. For a long moment he stayed frozen, studying me with that same hard attention, and then he took one small step forward only after my voice was gone. It was not trust yet, not even close, but it was something deliberate. And standing there in that sour concrete room, I had the feeling everybody had been wrong about him. This puppy was not shut down in the simple way people meant. He was living by rules none of us had understood yet. He didn't act scared the way scared puppies usually do. When I brought the German Shepherd puppy home, I did not bring him in like he was saved. I brought him in like he needed room to come apart slowly and safely. He got a quiet back room, an open crate with a folded blanket inside, a bowl of water, a second bowl with food set near the wall, and enough space that nothing in that room asked anything from him before he was ready. Most puppies in that state will either cling to a corner or pace hard in circles. But he did something different. He moved along the edges of the room in a slow, careful line, studying the windows, the floorboards, the doorway, the crate opening, as if he was not listening for danger, so much as reading the shape of it through light, movement, and whatever traveled up through the floor. My wet work boots were drying by the door, and the radiator gave off that dry, dusty heat old houses always seem to carry in winter. I stood in the doorway once and called to him out of habit, and he gave me nothing at all. Not a glance, not a flick of an ear. But when I bent my hand near my knee and moved 2 fingers just a little, his eyes cut toward me at once. That happened more than once, and each time it landed heavier. So I stopped trying to draw him in with my voice, left the food where he could choose it for himself, and let the room stay predictable. Frightened dogs often trust predictability before they trust affection. By evening, he had not touched the toy, had barely nosed the blanket, and had taken only a little food, but he had mapped every corner of that room with the patience of a dog, trying to survive something the rest of us could not see yet. When night came, he did not settle in the crate at all. He curled up just outside the doorway instead, sleeping in short pieces with his body pointed toward the only clear way out. And by morning, watching where he had chosen to rest, I knew this was not stubbornness, and it was not only fear. The first real clue came from everything he never looked at. The next morning, after seeing where the German Shepherd puppy had chosen to sleep, I stopped trying to guess what he felt and started paying attention to what he actually did. I set a metal bowl on the floor and let it ring a little. Nothing. I clicked the lock on the back door, tapped my knuckles on the table, opened the cabinet too fast by mistake, and still he gave me no sign that any of it had reached him. But when I walked a little closer across the old wood floor, his head came up right away. Not to my voice, to the change in movement, to the shift in the room itself. A strip of winter sun had fallen across the wall, and when my hand moved through it, his eyes followed that light like it meant something clear and dependable. That was when the whole shape of him started making a different kind of sense. He did not take the treat when I spoke to him. He did not take it when I clicked my tongue either. He only took it when my palms stayed low, open, and still enough to feel safe. At one point, a spoon slipped from my hand and struck the ceramic water dish with a sharp crack that would have startled any young dog in the house, and he did not even blink. I remember just sitting there on the floor for a second with the baseboard heat ticking behind me, looking at him and feeling that quiet kind of sadness that comes when the truth starts showing itself before you are ready to name it. So I stopped using my voice as my main way in. I turned one shoulder a little, lowered my eyes, opened my hand, and let my body do less. For the first time, he stepped close enough to eat from my palm, careful but willing, and then backed away without panic. It was a small thing, but it stayed with me. And somewhere in that slow, careful morning, a hard thought came over me and would not leave. What if this puppy was not choosing silence at all? What if he simply did not live in a world of sound? The first person he truly relaxed around wasn't me. A few days after that hard thought settled into the house with us, a woman from down the road stopped by with her 7-year-old son, Tobin, and a grocery bag holding 2 old fleece blankets and a rubber chew toy somebody had donated and forgotten to take back. The German Shepherd puppy was standing near the crate when they came in, not hiding, exactly, but holding himself still in that watchful way he had when he was trying to measure a room before the room could measure him. The plastic handles of the bag gave a soft little squeak in his mother's hand, and the puppy's eyes went there first, then to the boy, then back to the boy again. Tobin did not call to him. He did not bend over him or reach out too fast or fill the space with the kind of eager kindness that can feel like pressure to a dog who has not learned safety yet. He just sat down on the floor where the puppy could see him clearly and stayed there. At first, the puppy froze, then made a slow half circle, studying him from the side, the way dogs do when they want more information without taking a risk they cannot undo. What got me was how close he came, closer than he had ever come to me on his own. Tobin lifted one open hand, easy and still, and the puppy sat. Not like a trick, not like obedience, more like that quiet hand made better sense to him than every soft word the grown-ups had been trying to use. Traumatized dogs often trust the clearest signal, not the kindest voice. The room stayed calm, the baseboard heat ticking low beneath the window, and for the first time the puppy leaned forward instead of away. He touched his nose to Tobin's wrist and did not spring back afterward. He just stayed there, breathing, thinking, choosing. And watching that happen, I understood that what stood between that boy and that puppy was not some miracle gift. It was a language the rest of us had been too blind to notice. The day I stopped treating him like a hearing dog, he started coming back to life. After that afternoon with Tobin, the whole rhythm of the house changed around the puppy instead of asking the puppy to change for us first. I stopped leaning on my voice and put simple visual signals in its place, the kind a dog could read without guessing. An open palm meant pause. 2 fingers lowered meant easy. A hand to my chest meant come closer if you want to. I kept our days plain and steady, with meals at the same time, short decompression walks in quiet places, and little scent games on the floor that let him work without pressure. The leash made a soft brushing sound against my jacket by the door, and a sheet of notebook paper covered in pencil sketches of hand cues stayed on the kitchen table like a map I was still learning to follow. He was not suddenly carefree. He still froze hard at the doorway sometimes, and if somebody appeared too fast inside his line of sight, his whole body tightened before his mind could catch up. But something real had shifted. He had stopped only watching people and started checking them, looking into a face or a hand before he made up his mind about the next step. Trust grows faster when a dog is allowed to understand what comes next. On one short walk, With the cold air moving through the trees and the sidewalk clear in front of us, he took a few quiet steps ahead, then turned and looked back at me on his own. Not in panic, not to flee, but like he was checking whether we were still following the same path. It was the first time the puppy felt less like he was surviving my presence and more like he was beginning to include me in his world. That was when his progress became hard to miss, and that was also when I made the mistake that nearly cost him some of it. I thought he was ready. I was wrong. By then, the puppy had started to look steadier, in the small ways that make you hopeful before you have earned the right to be. He was checking in on walks, taking food more easily, settling faster after coming back inside, and I let those small victories talk me into believing he could handle a little more movement around him than he really could. A neighbor was having a short daytime get-together out in the yard. Nothing wild, just people standing around with paper plates and folding chairs, and I told myself we would only stay a few minutes at the edge so he could see the world and leave before it became too much. Nobody yelled, nobody reached for him, nobody did anything cruel. But the problem was never cruelty. It was chaos. He could not hear the crowd the way another dog might have, but he caught everything else. Hands lifting too fast, shadows crossing the fence, feet changing direction without warning, the boards under the porch carrying each step like a message through the ground. A folding chair scraped across the wood, and a paper plate slapped loose onto the grass when the wind caught it, and I watched his body tighten a little more with every second. He stopped taking treats. He began pacing along the fence in quick, narrow lines, then lost me completely, not running, not fighting, just shutting down right there in front of me while his eyes stayed open. That was the part that got me. He was still standing, but he was gone from the moment. When we got home, he went straight back to the place by the exit and would not move deeper into the room. So I did the only decent thing left to do. I stopped asking. I put him back on the quiet routine, left the room open and predictable, and later that night I set up a small camera so I could watch without crowding him. On the video, he did not thrash or pace. He just sat facing the door for a long time, like he was waiting for one clear signal the world had failed to give him again. And by morning, I understood something I should have understood sooner. The puppy had not gotten worse. I had just read him wrong all over again. He didn't need a bigger breakthrough. He needed smaller, safe moments. After that bad afternoon, I took everything back down to the studs and gave the puppy the kind of day that asked almost nothing from him. Same room, same open crate, same water bowl in the same place, same slow walk to the yard and back. He watched everything with that careful, measuring look of his, but the hard edge in him was not panic now, so much as waiting, as if he needed the world to prove it could stay simple for a while. Later that morning, Tobin came by again for a short visit, and this time, nobody tried to make anything happen. No praising, no reaching, no talk about progress. The boy just sat on the rug where the puppy could see him and repeated the same calm hand signal every so often. Nothing fancy, just one clear shape held steady long enough to mean something. At first, the puppy stayed inside the crate and watched from there. The little spring on the crate door gave a dry squeak each time it shifted, but nobody touched it, and after a while, he stepped out on his own. He did not go to the doorway this time. He made a slow half circle, studied both of us, and then lay down in the middle of the room where he could keep us in view without needing to retreat. That alone felt different. A traumatized dog does not need bigger moments first. He needs repeatable, safe ones. After a few more minutes, Tobin placed his hand against his own chest, and the puppy stood, walked forward in those careful little steps of his, and leaned one shoulder against the boy's knees. Not by accident. Not in passing. It was the first time he chose contact and stayed there. We kept the session short and left him a clear way back to his safe place if he wanted it. By late afternoon, he was asleep on the rug, breathing deeper than I had ever seen, without lifting his head every few seconds to check the room. And watching him rest like that, I was almost sure now that this was not only fear from whatever had happened before us. What if he was never ignoring us? What if he just couldn't hear us at all? By then, I had stopped arguing with that thought and finally took the puppy to a rehab vet across town, not because I wanted a dramatic answer, but because too many small things were lining up in the same direction to keep calling them coincidence. I told her everything as plainly as I could. How he never turned toward bowls clinking, locks clicking, doors shutting, or my voice from across the room. How he followed hands, posture, shadows, and the feel of movement through the floor with a kind of focus that was almost too exact for a dog his age. How he settled faster when the world stayed visual and predictable. She did not rush to label him. She just listened, watched him, and said there might be a significant hearing problem there, enough that he deserved a full test instead of more guessing. On the drive back, a plastic bottle rolled once across the passenger side mat and tapped the seat frame, and he slept through it with his chin on the folded blanket as long as my hand rested where he could feel it near him. That stayed with me. So did every moment I had once filed away as shutdown, stubbornness, or distance. A lot of dogs carry trauma, but trauma has edges. This felt like something built deeper into the way he moved through the world. When we went in for the appointment, he did not react to barking somewhere behind a closed door in the clinic hall, but the second my hand shifted in the glass beside us, his eyes went there. We kept the prep simple. Same blanket, short trip, no crowding, no extra fuss. And by then I knew we were only one step away from an answer, and I could already feel that answer changing everything I thought I understood about this puppy. He was never shut down. He was never ignoring us. He was just living in a world built for other dogs. The test confirmed what his body had been trying to tell us from the beginning. The puppy had severe congenital hearing loss. Not partial, not occasional. The kind that meant voices had never been the thing guiding him through a room. And once that answer was sitting there in plain view, so many old moments stopped looking sad in the same way and started looking clear. He had never been stubborn. He had never been distant for the sake of being distant. He had never been ungrateful. He had simply grown up in a world where sound made promises it could never keep for him. That was why he watched fingers, shoulders, shadows, footsteps, and the vibration of the floor with that fierce little concentration of his. That was why Tobin had not fixed him. He had just made sense to him faster than the rest of us did. That evening, the gray daylight was still hanging in the kitchen when it laid flat across his dark coat and made him look softer than he ever had in that first concrete room. A sheet of paper with new visual signals was already held to the refrigerator by a magnet, written in thick black marker so everybody in the house could stay consistent with him. We were all learning to use the same gestures, the same rhythm, the same clear rules. Dogs settle faster when communication stops moving under their feet. Tobin made up a simple home sign for good, and before long, the puppy was looking for that sign after every small success, like it mattered more than praise ever could. That was also the night I finally gave him a name. Micah. Quiet name. Solid name. A name that felt like it belonged to something small that had already survived pressure. When I signed it the best I could and just sat there, he came over without food, without coaxing, and rested his head on my knee. And with him there, like that, calm at last, only one question remained. Where was Micah truly meant to belong? He didn't need a perfect life. He needed a life that finally made sense to him. After a few more quiet visits, it became hard to pretend the answer was still undecided. Once the hold cleared and the paperwork was done, Micah did not choose that house because anybody felt sorry for him, and he was not there to complete some neat little rescue story for the rest of us. He chose it the way dogs choose what is true. He slept deeper there. He ate better there. When something startled him, he came back to himself faster there. Around Tobin, he no longer watched every movement like a warning. He watched the boy the way a dog watches the one part of the world that finally feels steady. Their days grew simple in the best way. A morning step out into the yard, the same hand signal at the door, a mat by the bed, short walks that ended before the world got too crowded, quiet scent games in the evening that let Micah work, think, and settle without being pushed past himself. A good rescue routine should feel boring from the outside, because boring is often what safety looks like to a healing dog. Months passed, and the puppy from that damp concrete intake room was still himself, still careful, still likely to startle if somebody entered his sight too suddenly, but now he knew how to come back down. He knew where home was. The day I stopped by to see him again, the sun was still up, and Tobin was sitting on the front step while Micah lay beside him with that dark gray coat warmed by the light. The screen door eased shut behind me, and a little blue rain jacket was drying over the porch rail. Tobin lifted his hand. Micah watched it, calm and easy, then rested one paw on the boy's boot and stayed there. Not a trick. Not a miracle. Just trust, finally spoken in a language he could live inside. And standing there looking at him, I understood something I wish more people knew. Sometimes rescue is not about changing a dog. It is about finally understanding the world he was already living in.